Well, hey everybody. Let's see. It's Monday, the 12th of May, 2014. I'm Wes Hagen. Welcome to our weekly wine blog. I'm a little off the cuff today, and I'm a little off my game. Just found out yesterday that a good friend of ours and a winemaker and the person who ran Vintegrated Solutions, which was our whole shipping coordinator here at Clos Pepe, he tragically died very, very young. Name's Dave Robinson. Wonderful gentleman from England, husband of Karen Steinwachs, who's the winemaker at Sea Grape Wine Company, as well as Buttonwood Wine. So I couldn't sleep last night. As I was thinking about that, I started thinking about, I don't know, how little control sometimes it seems like we have in this life, and sometimes just how quickly things go by and losses like this remind. And yesterday, to kind of sum it up real quickly, I was going out to feed our sheep here at Clos Pepe, and Gaius, our Spanish Ranch Mastiff, came up to me, and I guess kind of grabbed him by the shoulders and started rubbing his head. And it was at that moment, sort of feeling the emotional connection I have with this dog, that I kind of lost it about Dave, and I broke down emotionally. And as I sat there just giving my dog more and more love, I started thinking about emotional equilibrium. And sometimes I think it's really important to understand when something like this happens. Religious people say, you know, everything happens for a reason. I actually kind of came to the same conclusion yesterday, that the sorrow and loss that we have for someone that's taken away from us is actually paid back to this world in the way that we react to that loss and the way that we act towards the people we love. So I would like to think for every moment that someone is suffering and feeling the loss of Dave, that somewhere else someone is giving extra love to the people around them to make that all sort of find an equilibrium. So I'm really going to just suggest, whether you knew Dave or you didn't know Dave, to spend a little extra time today loving the people around you, and to make sure that everyone that is around you knows that they're loved. And just take a moment to realize that we just don't know, when we're going to cash our chips in. And it goes back to wine, I guess, in the sense that we all want to be just like, Dave and Karen, huge fans of table, music, life. So let's get around some tables, and let's open some wine, and let's eat some delicious food. And let's celebrate the life of Dave Robinson and everything he did for the Santa Rita Hills wine growers and for everything else. So this is a tribute to Dave, and we're thinking about you and Karen. So anyways, real quick, I had a couple of people ask me to do a couple things today. One is to talk about this impending heat wave that we're having again. It's about 82 degrees right now at the Clos, and it's going to be in the 90s tomorrow, which is very unusual. We're pretty lucky. We're right in the middle of flowering, so this heat wave will actually improve flowering, but will also start just at the end of our vegetative growth cycle. If we were already in a ripening cycle, I'd be a little more concerned about this heat, but I think what this heat's going to do is it's going to finish us completely in flowering, make the flowering very successful, which we could use a little bit of shatter. There's so many clusters out there, I wouldn't mind some of the berries falling off of the clusters. But we've got, I think because we're right at the end of sort of the vegetative growth cycle and the very beginning of the ripening cycle, I don't think this heat wave is going to push us forward like another week forward. I mean, everyone's talking that we're 3 weeks ahead right now, and that all depends on what happens in July and August. But these warm temperatures that are going to persist through this week, and slight cooling and then more warm temperatures next week, we're putting down a little more water. And we're basically going through and making sure that we have enough clusters on the plant to absorb those heat spikes without letting the fruit ripen too quickly, but also that we have little enough fruit that the fruit will express itself between maybe 2.5 and 3.5 tons per acre in the Pinot Noir and about 3.5 tons per acre in the Chardonnay. So the vines should be able to soak up the heat pretty well, finish flowering, and put us in a position where we'll be at the end of flowering and at the beginning of the sort of end of the vegetative cycle of growth. And then the vine's going to shift its physiology from making carbohydrates for growth to making sugar in the grapes. So this may be wishful thinking that it's not going to have much of an effect on pushing harvest forward, but I'm hoping that it'll just help us finish flowering and get us into a very good standard and very uniform level of growth and cane growth in the vineyard. As far as the second question that I was asked, and that was about last week, I was at the wine tasting and the wine judging. I've been doing a lot of wine judging recently, and people were asking me, how do I taste 100 wines without getting palate fatigue? And the answer is I don't. Some days I'm given 60 whites and 20 reds, and those days are very easy. I can taste white wine and rosé and sparkling wine all day and not have much palate fatigue. Sometimes the next day I'll have some hypersensitivity to acid, especially if the wines are so acidic they start to rub off the cheek lining and give my cheek lining a sort of granular feel. That's a good indication that you've tasted enough high acid white wines for the day. If you start feeling texture on the inside, sometimes your tongue does feel a little sensitized to acid as we continue to taste those. But I really don't have any problem with tasting 100 to 150 white wines in a day and evaluating them very carefully and consistently. My problem is when I get more than 20 to 30 big, rich red wines. Pinot Noir, not a big deal. Grenache, depends on where it's grown. But when we start doing Tannat, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Nebbiolo, those type of big, heavy, even Merlot these days seems to be having a little more tannin than I'm used to. So what I'm really careful to do is at the beginning of every flight, I may have 10 wines in front of me, and if they're red, I will start left to right one flight, right to left on the other flight. So there's a good balance between my palate fatigue. If my fatigue is getting worse through the flight, at least I'm going backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. Then I'll nose all of the wines and really let my nose guide me in what I really expect out of the wine. And then the key I found in the last few competitions that has really helped me avoid palate fatigue, I used to actually think about the wine while it was in my mouth, and I would keep each one in my mouth for sometimes 20 seconds, and that was really beating the hell out of my palate. So now what I'm doing is using my nose a lot, making a lot of notes on the nose, and then putting the wine in my mouth and spitting it out within 2 or 3 seconds, and then sitting there feeling the effects of that palate weight, the quality of the fruit, the balance between acidity, tannin and alcohol and fruit, and talking about whether I thought it was a bronze medal, a silver medal, and a gold medal. And for me, a bronze medal means it's a good wine with some very slight faults. Silver means it's a great wine with perhaps one slight fault. And a gold medal wine is a wine that just about everyone would agree is a very, very special wine of great quality and great typicity or balance. So for palate fatigue, my best suggestion is pay attention to how long you're keeping the wine in your mouth, and if you're not a professional wine judge, you really got to build your sommelier brain by slowly smelling and tasting wines over many years. Most palates can start with 5 wines, and then once you've been tasting wine for a few years, 10 wines, a couple more wines, a couple more years, 15, 20 wines, and by the time you've been tasting wine for 10 years, you should be able to go through 50 whites or 30 reds without having much palate fatigue if you're careful in not keeping the wine in your mouth too long. Well, for a sort of a sad day, I think that's about all I have for you guys. Again, my heart goes out to Karen and everyone at Buttonwood, everyone at Seagrape, and everyone at Vintegrated Solutions. Let's make sure we get to table tonight and really show the people that we love just how important they are in our lives. Sorry if I was a little distracted today without sleep, and I'm feeling a little numb, but again, let's show the world how much we can love. All right, we'll see you next Monday. Thanks so much. Bye.